Hello everybody and welcome to Brit of a Reality Check, the show that looks British reality TV directly in the eye and asks it, what are you playing at? My name isn't Davina McCall the Midwife, and remember, you can take part in the conversation too via Spotify comments, X or Reddit. Now, The Masked Singer UK is just days away from airing its finale, and in this episode, we're continuing to look at what all of the clues could mean. So far, we have hedged our bets on Bush, had to pause for thought on Bear, and last episode we dived into the deep clue sea of pufferfish. Today, we will be looking at how all of the clues could fit wolf, so let's get started. So like I said, this episode is slightly different from the last three, in that Wolf has had 5 episodes to go through, so there's lots more clues and performances to talk about, beginning with episode 2, where we were introduced to the theatrical Pirates of the Caribbean-esque costume for the first time. Immediately, I think it was clear that we were dealing with a professional performer, and the clues seemed to fit that. But who is under the mask? Well, the voice and all of the clues seem to lead towards one particular person, so let's take a look at why Wolf could be Wet Wet Wet's former lead singer, Marti Pellow. Firstly though, I will say, in the same way that Dressed Crab talks about fashion and Bear talks about Shakespeare, Wolf makes a lot of fairy tale references, and in the most part I think these can be ignored. They're surface level clues that I call costume clues. They tend not to be relevant themselves, but could hint towards other things. But nevertheless, let's see what Wolf had to say. So he began with a huge clue. He said, "I'm ready to make my mark on the Masked Singer," and Mark is actually Marty's real name, Mark McLachlan. Then there was a wooden shipbuilding kit, and Marty's family are actually shipbuilders. His great-grandfather was, and his father and great-grandfather were also builders. There was a fairy tales book, and that could be because Marty's written 2 books, which we'll look at later. He said there's always 2 sides to every story, and this leads to Jekyll and Hyde that Marty was in. He said, "Are you ready to take me as I am?" And this is also a song from Jekyll and Hyde, so that pairs up. There was the word Wolf Pack on a grey t-shirt. This could be for Marty's appearance on Emmerdale, where the Woolpack is the pub. There was a full moon shining in the background and has been throughout all of the clues packages, and this is for Marty's 3rd album, called Moonlight Over Memphis. There was then a bishop's hat, which could be a reference to chess that Marty was in the musical for. He then gave advice about the 3 little pigs' houses, and this could be because he was a painter or decorator, but also his family were builders. He said, "Not that I'm bitter," and these are actually lyrics in his song Broke Away, where it goes, "Even when the sweet turns bitter." And the last clue before the first performance was some bowling skittles, and Marty has said that his favourite place growing up was Bowling Harbour in Scotland. Wolf's first performance was then Let's Dance by David Bowie, and Marty has actually covered many David Bowie songs in the past. And his after-performance clue was, "As a wolf, I've held dominion over everything I see. Wild woods, creek or cave, that's my territory." And he played Che Guevara in Evita at the Dominion Theatre, hence, "I've held dominion over everything I see." And that was Wolf's first episode done, and he was really impressive in my opinion. You could tell that he was the theatrical type, and we need that sort of thing in the show, the sort of phoenix of this series. And I think it was clear from the off that he would make the final, I think, in my opinion. The next episode began with another chess reference by him saying, "My opening gambit was a move in the right direction." Wolf then held a spyglass and looked up to the sky. This could be for his album and song titled Stargazer. He said this show is more soap opera than fairy tale, which links to the Emmerdale appearance again. There was a map of Egypt or the Nile, and Marty has recorded songs with Nile Rodgers. He then said, "As a cub, I traded expectations others had and set off down my own road." This could be because he was set to be a builder, painter or decorator, but switched it up for music. He said, "High school is where I sniffed out my past," and Wet 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 formed in high school under the name Vortex Motion. There was a DNA test results, and the first of Marty's 2 books is Pellow Talk, which Marty describes as a chance to understand the DNA of the hits that you've loved over the years. There was a rat next to a cassette tape, and this is because he played the Rat Man in Dick Whittington. And me saying how similar he was to Phoenix is sort of backed up by his performance this week, where he did Copacabana by Barry Manilow, and then afterwards he gave us 2 possible clues. The first being Despite usually being so accident prone, we've managed to avoid any trips to the doctor this holiday. It could be because Marty has been hospitalised many times, including a nose injury from being in Jekyll and Hyde. Or, the second clue was, it's making me reminisce about the good old days, being overseas, hanging out with the gang. That could be because of his time travelling with the band around the world and recording the Memphis sessions in Tennessee. But then 2 weeks later, it was time for my favourite week, Clue Song Week. Some of the panel's guesses gave me the willies, is what he's began with. It could be because he was in Willie Russell's Blood Brothers, or because he recorded an album with the producer Willie Mitchell. He said nobody puts this wolf in the corner, and that's a reference to Dirty Dancing, because he took over from Patrick Swayze in the Broadway production of Chicago. There were 5 colourful umbrellas. This could be just because of Wet, 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 or it could be the 5 umbrellas from the opening scenes in Friends, and Wet, Wet, Wet covered the song With a Little Help from My Friends. He said, but am I an imposter? And the Wet, Wet, Wet album Cloak and Dagger was originally titled Maggie Pie and the Imposters. He said, lone wolf or running with the pack, this wolf has done it all, and that's a reference to Marty's careers both in band and solo. He said, I may be mysterious, but as if I'd stoop so low, and he has a solo album and single called Mysterious. Wolf then played with some wool, and that's another reference to Emmerdale. He said, I've joined forces with experienced names. This could be because he's worked with big names such as Beverly Knight, Leslie Garrett and Nile Rodgers. He then said, some who have a very particular set of skills, and this could be because he's worked with Liam Neeson in the War of the Worlds musical. But then the moment we've been waiting for, the Clue song, and he sang Candyman by Sammy Davis Jr. There could be many reasons for this. It could be for the song Sweet Little Mystery. It could be for the song Sweet Surrender. It could be because he performed at the Cadbury concert at Alton Towers. Or it could be because he was in Jekyll and Hyde, and he said before that the composer of Jekyll and Hyde also worked on Willy Wonka. He began episode 6 by saying Konnichiwa, and the band has performed in Japan. He said, I've got used to Saturday nights, and they have a song called Saturday Night, Sunday Morning. He said Witch Hunt and made lots of reference to witches, and this is because he's appeared in Witches of Eastwick, the musical. He said, I might be a wild thing, and the song that played in the background was Wild Thing by the Trogs. This is a reference to the Wet, Wet, Wet covering the Trogs song Love Is All Around. There was a picture of Angel from Buffy's eyes, and these are for Angel Eyes, a Wet, Wet, Wet song. There was an egg sandwich. This one I'm not entirely sure on, but someone online has suggested that he's declared his love for a Glasgow bakery called Morton's Rolls. Or, I've just wondered, could this be for Scotch egg, because he's a Scot? Who knows? He then said How Wicked, and that's another reference to Witches of Eastwick. Before there was a Three Little Pigs book with chapter 4 missing, and this could be for Marty's second book called The Lost Chapter. And after giving us a stunning rendition of Birds of a Feather by Billie Eilish, we were then given the Clue Connections clue, which were 3 words, right, down and door, which lead to the word stage. This could either be because he's been on stage many times in concerts and West End, or it could be for him being in War of the Worlds live on stage, or it could be because Marty Pellow is a stage name for Mark McLaughlin. But then we move into last Saturday night, the semi-final, where we were given 2 performances from Wolf and some more clues. He started by saying I'm Still Standing, and this isn't an Elton John reference as you might think, but Marty actually has a song called Still Standing. He said, I'm sure we can come to an arrangement. This is for the musical term, perhaps for their version of Love Is All Around. He said, I'm no angel, I might be a wild thing. This is another reference for Angel Eyes and for the Trogs. He stood on 2 step ladders. This is for the Wet, Wet, Wet compilation album called Step by Step. He said, nothing's holding me back, and when I'm in full flow. And this is for the Wet, Wet, Wet album Holding Back the River. He said, I'm not a Londoner, but I've shown I can lead the East End to victory, and he won the reality show Just the Two of Us with EastEnders actress Hannah Waterman. He said he's ready for a battle that's out of this world, and this is for the War of the Worlds musical that he was in. We then had 2 performances, Rebel Yell by Billy Idol and Don't Dream It's Over by Crowded House. Both of these show exactly how versatile Marti Pellow is, that he can do the rock side, he can do the ballad side. It's perfect and it deservedly got him into the final. And that's pretty much all there is for the clues so far. Usually I say what clues we should look out for going forward, but there isn't much else to cover. Perhaps if he says wolf, 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 it could lead to wet, wet, wet. Or if he mentions politics, that could be for his initials MP. We will see Wolf again in this Saturday's grand final, where he faces two powerhouses in Pufferfish and Dressed Crab. But other than that, as always, please let me know your thoughts and theories via Spotify, X or Reddit. And thank you for listening, and see you next time on Brit of a Reality Check.